Watch the gap. There we go. Some lovely sounds. Hi everyone, it's Trena from John's Furniture Repair, and I've got a exterior door here that we're doing. It's going to be the last exterior door that we do in Windsor, Essex. So I'm excited to do this one. Even though it's not going to be a wood finish, we're going to be painting this door. We still need to remove everything and prep the wood and repair. So if you don't like painted wood, this might not be the video for you, but you can enjoy the process up to that point. So let's get to work. Okay, so this is a door off of a house on Riverside Drive, which is on the Detroit-Windsor river that goes between, and it's in pretty rough shape. It's a nice house, an old historical house on Riverside, and someone's painted it a lot and added caulking, and everything's kind of cracked on the panels. I think it's just because there's so many layers of paint and it's kind of stuck the panels and cracked the wood there. Same thing here, lots of cracks. And the paint's just in really bad condition. The hardware is ill-fitted to the door. It's a really interesting house. It's kind of a tiny house built like a big house. And this door is quite small actually. But we just need to get all this paint off and this hardware as well, so we can clean it up back to the wood and see what we're dealing with. This handle looks like it was an interior handle that someone put on the exterior door, but we're going to keep it where it is. The customer likes it, and we just need to do a little bit better carpentry. They didn't even put a piece of wood under here, so we'll be getting that fit better, as well as this cylinder lock. I'll show you the other side. There's a big ugly lock on it. It's kind of hanging out over the molding here, so that's not good. So let me flip this door and I'll show you the other side. Okay, so this is the interior side of the door, and we've got a mail slot that's kind of handmade, really not that pretty. We're going to be removing that and putting a proper slot in. Same thing, cracks on the panels. These are the screws that where the door knocker attaches. And there's a big ugly lock I was talking about. So it's just huge. And really, you know, not something that's going to add any beauty to this. It's from the 70s or something. I don't know. We're going to be putting a new lock cylinder in, so it's just a lock cylinder, not this whole situation. Same handle on the inside. This time they did put wood underneath this side, but we're going to redo it because it looks like it's all cracked and not done very well. So this weather stripping here we're going to take off. We're going to put a better piece of weather stripping on this door. So first things first, I'm going to get all the hardware off of this door and the weather stripping and mail slots and everything, and get to stripping. All right, I've got all of the hardware off. I think I took like 200 pounds off of the door. It weighs a lot less now. So now we've got to start undoing all this work, as well as this big hole needs to be plugged. If you're gonna, do something like this, you need to follow the profile of what's already in here to make it blend in. So we're gonna put some new pieces on and do just that. But first we gotta get these guys out of here. Probably gonna be a nail in there, because that's usually what I find with jobs that aren't great. Yeah, there's a couple nails there. Yeah, so, these pieces are broken. They probably weren't pre-drilled when they screwed into it, and it just kind of broke in half. Plus it's a pretty small piece. So you need to be really careful when you do something like that. This is pretty big damage here on this side. Looking at, where the tenon comes into the door here, there's a big hole right where that door goes right in here. Now, I don't know how much room there is, but of course the mortise lock has to be centered at some point. And the problem here is that the door is so small, this rail here is too short for any normal exterior door mortise, like the lock that goes in here. Usually, it's like 2 3/4 away from the edge of the door that they have the things positioned. So we kind of have to keep this hole, unfortunately. This door isn't a super awesome, high quality situation, but it's something they want to keep because it's original to the house. And the house is very quirky. It's made by somebody who kind of grabbed pieces from other old houses and made it a really interesting, quirky house, but it has these types of issues because of that. So it looks like there's something here too. And a weird thing I'm seeing is like a bit of a metallic underneath this. So stay tuned for that. Somebody painted their door silver. I'm not sure why, but when we get stripping, we'll be able to see what that is, or if it's just in certain places. I don't know. I see it over here too, under this little patch here. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Can you see it there? Kind of a silver. Yeah, so I'm gonna grab some nail pullers, get this out. The other thing that I found in here where the mortise was, this is all rotten in here. I can just pull it out, and the screws weren't even tight. You saw that when we were taking apart. There's a break here. There's only like, maybe 3/8 of an inch material here, because it's a thin door. So they put oversized hardware into a very much interior door and tried to make it work. So we just got to put it back that way, unfortunately. They want to keep this door, so I'll do what my customers want me to do. That's not a problem. But I'm just showing you what, the difficulties are with doing that. So I'm gonna grab a pail of stripper, a couple of nail pullers, and let's see what we got underneath all this paint. Okay, so a lot of you might be wondering, hey, this might be lead paint. So we did test it. It is not lead paint. The first layer that came off super easily was latex. The last 2 layers, 2 or 3 layers, couldn't tell, were an enamel oil-based paint. So back in the day, we used to have those oil-based paints. They weren't lead, but they were still pretty toxic. If this was lead paint, I would actually be doing the same thing. So what you don't want to do with lead paint is sand it or scrape it, where you're putting dust into the air around you. You want to use a chemical stripper, which removes everything wet and no dust particles will be. Now the sanding part, you need dust collection. You need to wear a mask and you have dust collection. That's where the Festool comes in line, where if I need to do some sanding on this, it's going to remove most of, like 99% of the dust, which may contain lead, not on this one, but on other ones. I mean, any dust, really. You don't want that in your lungs. So the Festool does a good job at that. And then also just wearing a mask and having ventilation in your space, you know, to keep your air flowing. So if this were lead, I do the exact same process. So I don't even need to know if it is lead, but a lot of you do ask. So we did test this one, and this is an enamel oil-based paint. And you'll notice this first layer coming off, and this next one here is still gonna take some time. But this first layer kind of acts like a greenhouse effect to keep the stripper working on that layer. And most times this layer won't pop up like this one did, because it's just a different makeup. It'll probably have to be scrubbed and scraped and like with a brush with chemical to remove, and it'll just come off like a slurry. This needs to be put into a canister and brought to toxic waste because there are a lot of chemicals in here. So I'm just gonna let this sit a little bit longer. You can kind of see that next layer is starting to work. I'll get you in close here. You see that there, the abrasion of the brush with the chemical is just starting to get some serrations in that next layer. So I'm just gonna let the chemical work, and I've got plenty of other things to do. So I'm just going to keep it wet, which is really important. You gotta keep your stripper wet to keep it working, and come back and check it once in a while with a scraper. So are you guys seeing this? We got silver paint everywhere. That's insane. Who would paint their door silver? That's interesting. Anyways, just scraping away. This will need probably another, well, absolutely another coat, maybe another one. But we got pretty far down on our first go. And I could have left it sit a little bit longer, but I got a little impatient and excited. I thought I might find a cedar door under here, but I think that's pine or fir. I'll know for sure when I get it all off. If it was a cedar door, my recommendation would be to just keep it that way. But that depends on, it's fun to have a painted door. You can do a lot of, it's kind of a place on your house where you can do something funky. When I lived on Victoria Avenue in Windsor, back when I had my shop in Windsor's Walkerville area, we had a nice big oak front door. I refinished the inside and painted the outside bright sunshine yellow, and it looked so nice against the brick, the red brick that we had on the house. And it was just a nice kind of because I did refinish all the wood inside the house too. So it was kind of a nice pop of color. I always think that your wood trim looks so much nicer if you can have something painted and contrasty to kind of highlight how nice the wood is in your room. I think a lot of people do like oak cabinets, oak trim, oak everything, and then you can't really enjoy the beauty of the oak because it's everywhere and it kind of drowns out itself. So it's nice to have some contrast, I think. That's just my opinion. But also, like with furniture, if you just have an entire house full of old brown dark antiques, I think that you really lose the beauty of those pieces because they're kind of lost in a sea of old brownness. And I love old brown antiques, but when it's just a whole room full of them, you really can't enjoy them. I think it's just overpowering. Just like anything, if you do something too much, then it's not gonna stand out and look beautiful. It's just gonna be too much. Anyways, I'm gonna scrape all these pieces away as much as I can, and then we'll throw another layer on. All right, so we've got the first section done. Pretty beat up. I can see why they painted, although this is kind of beautiful, if you ask me. I like the character in an old door. But if we're painting, this is, you know, a good surface to do it on, I guess. So it looks like fir to me, which is a good exterior wood. I think it's fir, I don't think it's pine. It's pretty too much orange for pine, I think. So we've got that section done. I usually like to work in the center and then I do the rails last, the edge. So we'll just get this whole section going now. And you kind of see my process here. Took 3 rounds of chemical to go, and then the last round with methyl hydrate. And they just pick out the little areas in the corners and stuff with a pick. And it's all good. So on to the next one. I'll move all that crap off of there and get it finished. All right, there it is, all stripped. Looking pretty gnarly. Anyways, so this whole situation needs some attention. We are going to put a lock cylinder back in, so I won't be filling this hole, but a lot of damage around it needs to be repaired. This situation, this hole was under that putty that I pulled out, and this needs to be repaired properly. This one, you know, the hole is supposed to be here. I don't know why there's an extra hole here. I'm going to deal with that as well. This whole area is broken. This is probably where something used to be. It's all puttied up, and there's 1, 2 nails, I think just 2 nails there. As well, down here, there's a nail somewhere here that I ran into. So a couple of nails, broken pieces, a mess. At least, you know, we are having to put pieces here so I can make a nice solid piece to act as a corner block, but also, you know, support that handle and give this door a little bit of structural integrity back right here, here, and here. So the other thing that I noticed when we got the paint off, this panel's all gapped, shifted, and if you look closely, you can see little nail here, 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 and all around the panel pretty much. And what happens when you attach the panel to the frame, it no longer can move with shrinkage and expansion, and it pulls away from one or it splits. So thank goodness it just pulled. We'll take those nails out and push it back into that groove. Same with this one. I'm not going to do that until I have the other side stripped because I don't know if there's nails on that side too. So at this point, we're just going to, I'm going to put a bunch of putty everywhere so it dries while I flip it for sanding, and we'll flip it over and start on the next side. Okay, you can tell we are on the exterior side. There's a lot more paint. You know, you can see the thickness of it. So my stripper is going to take a little longer, probably more like 4 coats, 4 rounds, but you can just see like the dimension there. It's very, very thick, especially in the corners. You've got like an 1/8 inch of paint. And it looks like some corners, you know, they're just filled with paint. It's not even wood anymore. And you can see down here, the wood is way down there. So we're going to be doing a few rounds of the stripper. You could move to a heat gun for a very thick paint like this. But it does take a little bit longer, but you're not using as much material, and you just have to be able to scrape for a little bit longer. It's a little bit more labor intensive, I guess I should say, because you are mechanically removing it off. But there's a little bit of that with this too. But usually I don't scrape past when it gets difficult. I just add more chemical. Gotta let the chemical do its thing for you. So this is where all the stripper ran through on that gap in the panel. I don't see any nails over there, but there could be some along the other side. So we'll just wait till I have it stripped to get everything back in place. But yeah, pretty messy. But these are kind of my favorite jobs, to be honest. They're really difficult to clean up and full of white paint. And it just feels so satisfying to get things out of, you know, pulling big chunks of paint out of every corner and cleaning it up back to the original moldings and revealing their patterns. And yeah, so I'll just keep on having fun over here. I mean, Look at that lift. It's incredible. Isn't it gorgeous? Okay, so we've got the exterior side stripped. Isn't that beautiful? Just kidding. You also got the doors wide open here. We just had a big rainstorm. It's like plus 16 in the beginning of April. That's not gonna happen in Saskatchewan. Anyways, I'll enjoy my last nice spring here. So, obviously we have this whole section. It's gonna need some plugs and some repair. We do have to put the handle back on, so one of these is usable still. We have old mounting surface stuff to repair. We've got some broken trim, needs a big chunk of putty there. This needs to be glued back in. General major scrapes and bruises on this. It looks like somebody took a pretty serious coarse grit, whatever to it, sandpaper. So lots of sanding. I'm gonna get the Festool out and just give it a good burn. But first of all, I'm just gonna go over the whole thing and putty like we did on the other side. And then I'm just gonna flip this and sand the other one because it's dry and ready for sanding. Pretty gnarly. Okay, so we've got everything under putty. Has a lot of putty, little dents and everything in the softwood. Got this glued up, that fixed. And there were a lot of grooves from a previous strip job in the molding. So almost every single molding got a putty treatment over those grooves, and those will get sanded. And I'm trying to loosen these. You saw me working with that putty knife, getting underneath all of this trim to loosen this. It's not moving yet, so I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side because these have got to shift back over into the groove on that side. Same with this one, has to kind of shift over that way back so there's no gap there. So when we turn it over tomorrow, I'll do the same thing on the other side with the putty knife and see if I can get those panels to shift. They have to move. There's no way they're not moving. So I'll break something before I let this not move. And then I'll just fix it. So it's gonna move whether it wants to or not. But I'm gonna leave this overnight because I gotta head off to yoga, which is right across the road out that window. It's probably the best setup ever. I just walk down the field and over to yoga. And that's the only reason I'm alive. So, goodbye shop, and we'll see you in the morning. All right, it's the next morning, and we're gonna try to loosen these panels from this other side so we can fill this gap back up. Get you close up on that gap, see if it's moving. This gap right here, we're trying to close. We're stuck. Okay, I'm gonna get a stronger clamp. There it goes. There, that's good. Okay, so you can see the gap is closed up. We moved it over that much. So we gotta clean up that edge that was pulled over that way. But now we don't have a gap in the door. So I gotta do the same thing to this panel. It's got a large gap all along there as well. So I'm gonna do it two at the same time, here and here, because it's so long, and pull it over with 2 bar clamps. Okay, I'm gonna crank these one shuts now. Watch the gap. I'm gonna try to crank it at the same time. There we go. Some lovely sounds. And there we go. Awesome. Really happy with how that moved, even though we had to put a couple holes in the panels. So now we just need to clean up this little ridge here. Definitely when you have so many layers of paint, it does act like glue and panels can get stuck that way as well. But there were nails in this one, so that is what I'm presuming happened here. So I'm gonna get this all off of here and scrape this up, and then we're gonna start sanding. Okay, so I've got these pieces off, the broken ones there, and I had to take them off because there's so much paint underneath them and crudded on these pieces that I just couldn't get them to lay down. I have to take them off and clean up underneath. So I'm just going to be chipping off. And you could just like cut out and put a whole new piece in too. That would also be a good repair. This one goes here. And this one goes here. These are terrible fitting pieces. I'm just gonna cut it out. Okay, I decided to chisel this out instead. Those pieces just didn't fit back in very nicely. So now I've got to make a new piece to fit in here. Just gonna use a piece of tape and line it up with each edge. Okay, and then I just transfer it onto my piece and go cut it on the bandsaw. Okay, after some fine tuning, I've got a piece that fits in here pretty good. So I'm just gonna glue it with Carpenter's glue, tight bond. And I've made it so it's the same gap here for the mortise lock, so I don't have to change that after. Okay, and then I'm just gonna grab a clamp to go that way. Okay, now I'm gonna start thinking about these blocks that I have to put back in here. And I'm just gonna cut probably a 1 inch by 1 inch piece to go in here. Just kind of figure out the way. And then we have to cut this trim back so it fits right in. And then we have to copy that molding onto this. I'm gonna 45 it. So when the trim comes in, I want it to join that way. Okay, now that we've got everything under putty and it's all glued up there, the last area that I need to pay attention to is these holes. These are completely rotted out. There's barely any wood here to do anything with. So I'm going to chisel out this whole area and insert a new block in with some epoxy so I can have a good mounting surface. And if I can add more wood here, I will. I'll measure that lock and make sure I can do that if I can. I've got this thing flipped. So this is the exterior side. This is the bad side. They're both bad, but this one's worse. You can just see the amount of sanding I'm gonna have to do with all these scratches. And they don't just go on the raised panels, they're everywhere. So I'm starting with 100 grit and getting it down pretty good. So I'll do all the surfaces with the fast tool that I can get to, and then I'm gonna have to hand sand all these out with 120. And we have to plug this hole, make our little sections here and here like we did on the other side. I've got that in there until the blocks dry that we put in. But right now I just have to get a whole bunch of sanding done. So it's probably gonna be an hour or two of sanding. All right, so we've got this thing all prepped. I've been doing quite a bit of work off camera on these hardware mounts. I had to add a bigger plate. I should have measured it first. I was just going by the old one, but obviously they weren't fitting right. And a little bit wider of a plate here too for the new lock cylinder that we're putting in. So we did that on both sides, fit everything in, and it works and it's ready to go. So I took it all out again and we just need to dust this thing off. Now, if you do not like painted wood, this is where you stop watching this video, because we are going to be putting a primer on both sides and then doing one side in Chantilly lace, which is a white, and the other side's going to go in a really nice blue. So this is an exterior door, and I think it's the right treatment for this door as well. It's pretty beat up and it'll be a good protection on the next exterior door. So I'm gonna get the primer rolling here. Excuse me, frog in my throat this morning. And yeah, so if you don't wanna watch the rest of this, thanks for coming along so far, but here we go into color. All right, so I've got the drawer, or the door here, and it's been drying for 4 or 5 days. And I just finished giving it a buff with some Mohawk wax. I'll show you which kind I used. And waxing your doors, your exterior doors, is always a great idea. So I just use a Blue Label wax, paste wax, brown. And I really like how it deepened the color. And if I would have filmed it, you could have seen that. Sorry. So it's got kind of a nice semi-gloss sheen, and you can see a lot of the wood distressing. I like that. It looks kind of like an old antique painted door. So it still has some nice character, even though it is paint. So now I am ready to start getting this thing put back together with hardware, and I did clean it all up. Got the lock apart, got that cleaned. So let's get this thing put back together. So I've got the door flipped over here on the interior side, and I'm just looking to attach the mail slots back on. We have the original one on the other side, but if you look here when it opens, it goes right past the door opening. So that makes it pretty tricky to put something back on. This is what they wanted to put on the inside, so that they had like a double flap for better weather stripping, but it's gonna hit this piece and it doesn't even open, so they wouldn't be able to get anything in the mail slot. So I just called my customer and we decided we're going to use the interior part of this set, and I'm just gonna have to build it up on kind of a raised little frame so that that door opening on the outside can flap in. So I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger than this. I'm gonna router the edge out, cut this out obviously, and yeah, see how it works. And there it is, all finished up. Got all the hardware back on. I did wax and buff this exterior side. Got all the hardware, the brass shined up. Not to a total shine, I like it to be a little bit more antique. And I did kind of patina these new hardware pieces. We've got our new deadbolt here, so it'll be much nicer than the old situation. And our new plates that we put for the hardware to fit. And we've got this guy back in. I really like how the sheen and the texture of the distressed wood looks with this paint. It's kind of old antique painted door look, and I like it. And it's really smooth because we did buff it, so it's got a really nice sheen, and it still has that nice amount of distressing in the wood because it was really beat up, and erasing all of that is totally not necessary. But you can see that nice beautiful sheen coming off the door. Let me turn it around for you. And there's the other side. We've got our Chantilly lace satin lacquer-based paint on this side. And I do have some holes down there drilled for the weather stripping that I'll put on at the house. So again, it's got a nice sheen. The inside wasn't as beat up, but it still had a lot of character, so we left that intact as well. And there's our plate that we made for the inside of the door. We ended up not using the flap because it just didn't work. We had to lift it off of the door because, as we all know, the door is not thick enough for the exterior hardware. Nowhere is it more evident than the hinges, which stick out quite a way from the door. But I think we've got it looking really good. It's functioning, and it's kind of charming. Hi everyone, it's Trena from John's Furniture Repair, and I've got a new front door here, or it will be anyways.